Payroll and accounting software such as QuickBooks. We'll discuss a few different terms and then how they are related, including payroll. What is payroll? What is accounting software? How are those things going to be related? And when we consider the idea of payroll, it's often a huge topic that means different things to different people. When we're working in accounting, we obviously consider payroll as the process of generating payroll, recording the transaction for payroll. However, if we're in human resources, we often think of payroll as all the types of things that we need to do with relation to employees, not all of them, many of them not, focusing in on specifically the recording of payroll. And if we consider just law in general, then payroll is going to be a part of payroll law. Obviously, payroll also touches into taxes in terms of payroll taxes, withholdings, federal income tax, Social Security, Medicare. So the concept of payroll in and of itself is a huge term that could be thought of in many different ways by many different people, and of course is related to each other in many different ways. Then we consider the software in terms of, okay, what about the data input part, the accounting software in accounting such as QuickBooks? How is that piece put into the puzzle in terms of what payroll is? How is payroll going to be processed through something like accounting software? Here is the QuickBooks homepage. This is the desktop version, but these concepts apply to an online version as well. The homepage on the desktop version has this nice flowchart on the homepage. We're concentrating down here in the employees section. When we consider something like payroll, note we have one payroll law. What is payroll law? We consider payroll law, and again, we might consider some things in relation to human resources. However, here we're focusing in on accounting related items. In other words, when we think of payroll law, we might be considering other types of things from a human resources department. Then those types of things we need to enter into the accounting system. So whether we're in human resources, we might be considering payroll as part of our job, and recording payroll might be one component of it. Or we might be thinking from an accounting standpoint, what are the accounting standpoints with relation to payroll? What do I need to know about payroll law in order to record payroll transactions? And that's the angle, of course, that we are most familiar with here from the accounting standpoint. In other words, if we learn accounting, we typically learn the normal types of transactions that happen. We record expenses in a similar way as we would record the expense of payroll, which is just another expense typically. However, the expense of payroll has been complicated greatly by added laws that are related specifically to payroll, laws that often are now specialized in special companies that deal with payroll and or tied in with human resources type laws such as Social Security, such as Medicare, which are going to require us to withhold, such as federal income tax withholdings, to name a few, as well as the reporting requirements that go along with them, like reporting quarterly forms 941s, W-2s, and W-3s. Therefore, from an accounting standpoint, the idea of payroll, when we start learning accounting, oftentimes we run through accounting, we learn how to record all the transactions, and then we get to the topic of payroll, and we basically learn the bare minimum of payroll and say, whoa, that's a lot going on there with laws and different types of things specific. I'm just recording transactions here, and possibly then we gloss over the vast amount of detail that's required to learn payroll, because it does require a lot of laws, just so that we can then know how to record the transactions. In other words, it should be an easy transaction where we just basically pay someone, credit cash, and we would debit payroll expense. That should be as easy as paying the utility bill. But it's way harder than that, because there's a lot of laws that stop us from doing that. And therefore, to really understand payroll, we need to get an idea of that. As we note through that, we also need to consider that payroll has become more of a specialty because of that. So when we consider these type of laws, these types of human resources, we could consider specialties within human resources. And we also could see specialties in terms of tracking just different payroll companies outside of the accounting system. If we're running our own accounting system, we might then run the accounting system in QuickBooks or some other accounting system, or we might run with some other third party, and that's a decision we have to make. But because of the complexity, no matter what the decision is, notice it's still kind of an add-on type of situation. For example, if we use some software such as QuickBooks, we typically have to pay for payroll as an added feature. It is through the same company, through Intuit, but it's still going to be an added feature. We have to basically pay extra to do. It's not part of the normal accounting cycle, or it is the more normal accounting cycle, but not the normal accounting package that QuickBooks and most softwares offer, because again of the complexity that's going to be around payroll. So when we approach payroll, we first want to think, okay, how are we approaching this payroll from? Are we going from a law standpoint? Are we going from a human resources standpoint? Or are we going from recording the transactions, looking at how are we going to record this information in compliance with the laws? And that's typically how we're considering it here. That's typically the least well-known type of thing that people know. People might know payroll law. They might know minimum wage laws and types of laws related to requirements for employees in terms of text, but many people don't understand the journal entry, and every company needs to record the journal entry. And even people that are actually processing payroll and putting payroll into the system, if you were to ask them to interpret what the system of QuickBooks or something like that is doing in terms of journal entry, accounts going up and down, how would this thing reconcile? Many people, many accountants don't understand it at all. Many tax preparers don't understand it, don't have a grasp of it, because again, it's pretty complicated to think about, and because of just the amount of data that will be involved, even if we only have a few employees. Therefore, if you want to learn payroll, if you want to concentrate in on payroll, you really got to get something that looks directly at the accounting for payroll, or makes that the principal focus. Or otherwise, you're just going to basically learn payroll laws that doesn't really get down to the nuts and bolts of what we want here, which is actually to know what's being recorded in terms of transactions. How's the paycheck going to be recorded? How's that going to be put into the QuickBooks system? That's what we concentrate on here. We do have a course that concentrates on payroll. We have a course that concentrates on payroll just in and of itself, working problems within Excel. We also have a course that has payroll with relation to QuickBooks, QuickBooks Online, and a course related to QuickBooks Desktop, whichever version you might use. You could learn payroll, again, without any accounting software. Just learn the transactions, the journal entries, and use Excel to do that. Will help greatly to use Excel to be able to work longer problems related to payroll. So if you're working in accounting, that's really the way to do it. And again, working in accounting, most accounting courses gloss over payroll, take a lot of shortcuts in payroll, because they're trying to get the general rule, and most people leave accounting courses, accounting programs, without having a grasp of payroll. If you want to have a grasp of payroll, you got to focus basically in on payroll and do a full problem based on payroll. Using Excel is a great way to do that. If you want to use accounting software, then you're going to learn the data input in accounting software, but you also want to learn basically what the software is doing. You ultimately want to be able to describe what happens. You want to be able to imagine, what if I was to be audited? All I could say to the auditors, look, I put it into QuickBooks and that's what it spit out. That's not going to, that doesn't give us that much assurance. We want to be able to say that this is what QuickBooks is doing, this is how it reconciles, this is why it ties out, and that'll give us some assurance to be able to explain that to an auditor and to clients, and just to have some peace of mind in and of ourselves, which might be the most important factor. Here's an example of one of the courses. This is the desktop version. Again, we do have an online course. We have a course with just payroll that goes through Excel examples as well. If we scroll through this information, we have the starting of it or the beginning of it, which will be free. So if you wanted to go through and just take a look at a mini course, basically there's going to be a substantial portion of the introduction and the introduction to payroll that is free, which is basically a course in and of itself. And you can do that with no pay, no credit card, and take a look at that. Obviously, payroll is a long topic, so it will have a substantial amount of material to get into the full topic. We do have example problems, and we do this in a test type format where we'll actually do the paid payroll within QuickBooks and then add payroll processes. And as we do this, we'll do this in like a scientific method and actually add all the payroll items, process the payroll, look at the Form 941s, look at the W-2s, and do that in a systematic way. Really, the only way to understand payroll is to put these pieces together, because there's a lot of laws that basically make sense in and of themselves, and I think this is kind of how the law got so complicated in and of itself, where they make laws and say, hey, this isn't too difficult if you just apply this one law in isolation on a yearly salary basis. But then if you break all the laws down together, And you have to report that on a payroll by payroll, employee by employee basis rather than on a yearly basis, and then combine them all together and report them on each individual check quarterly and yearly. Well, then now you have a whole lot of data that even a little law, even a little change can cause a lot of data. And that's so the only way to really see that interaction is to go through this process and kind of link them all together and see how everything would tie together for that. So again, you can take a look at the free version of the course here and see some processes to it. There's also a discount below in the description, so it's an affiliate discount link that should have a discount to it.